Welcome to the Cenario Podcast, your guide to mental health and well-being. Each episode, we uncover practical tools, discuss expert insights, and explore how supplements can transform your mental health journey. Get ready to learn, grow, and thrive with us.
Okay, let's get into it. We are doing a deep dive today into something that almost everyone experiences, but it can feel incredibly isolating. We're talking about intrusive thoughts. You know the ones I mean.
Yeah.
If you've ever been just going about your day and suddenly, bam, this really jarring image or impulse pops into your head, something that makes you physically cringe and think, whoa, where did that come from? That's what we're unpacking, these thoughts that feel totally alien, disturbing, just not you. So our mission here is pretty straightforward. We want to strip away the stigma, define these thoughts, understand why they happen, maybe where they come from, and most importantly, give you a practical toolkit, ways to manage them so you can shift from that fear and, frankly, shame towards real understanding, acceptance even.
And that shift from that gut punch of fear to actually understanding, it really starts with one absolutely crucial piece of information. This is the big aha moment, I think. And we need to say it right up front. It's probably the most important thing to grasp. Experiencing these thoughts, it doesn't mean your brain is broken. It is profoundly, incredibly normal. There was research in the Journal of Obsessive Compulsive and Related Disorders. It found something like 94% of people, 94% experience intrusive thoughts at some point.
Wow, 94. Let's just sit with that for a second. Because if you're listening and you felt like, oh my God, my brain is uniquely dark or twisted, well, the data says you're actually having a really, really common human experience. You're normal, just knowing that. That alone must take a huge weight off for a lot of people.
It absolutely does, realizing that pretty much everyone else is getting similar kinds of unwanted mental spam. Yeah, that's half the battle right there.
Okay, so let's define the experience a bit more clearly. The source material we looked at had a great example, super relatable, like you're driving, totally focused, hands on the wheel. And then just for a split second, this image flashes in your mind, suddenly just yanking the wheel and swerving into traffic. Horrifying, right?
Yes. And that horror, that is the key, that immediate fear response, that jolt of, oh God, no, that's the proof. It proves the thought is not what you actually want. It's not your desire, not your intention. If you genuinely wanted to do that, you wouldn't panic. You'd feel, well, something else entirely. But because it feels so utterly wrong, that's why it's so distressing. And we should probably touch on why they have such power over us. Why do they feel so uncomfortable, even shameful? It's because they often attack what we hold most dear. They tend to conflict directly with our core values, our morals.
Oh, okay. So they hit us where it hurts, basically.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a really devoted parent, you might get a sudden awful thought about harming your child. If you're deeply religious, maybe a blasphemous image pops up. The brain's just generating stuff kind of randomly. And the thoughts that clash most violently with who you are, those are the ones that stick. They create the most emotional friction, so you notice them.
That makes a lot of sense. They're like these little mental landmines, aren't they?
Yeah.
Triggering our deepest values.
And it's interesting, while the thoughts feel so intensely personal and specific, the research shows they usually fall into just a handful of categories. What are the main themes we see again and again?
Yeah, they are remarkably consistent. The four big ones that keep showing up in studies are, first, aggression or harm. So sudden images or impulses about hurting yourself or hurting someone else. Second, sexual thoughts, usually things that are inappropriate, taboo, maybe out of line with your orientation or values, things you never consciously pursue.
Yeah. Third, blasphemy or immorality, thoughts that violate your religious beliefs or your deeply held moral code. And the fourth one is contamination or germs, really intense, vivid fears about being unclean, getting sick, spreading illness.
It's almost comforting, in a weird way, to know that everyone's getting roughly the same horrible mental pop-up ads.
Weirdly, yes. It normalizes it. They're basically just neural noise, which actually leads us perfectly into the next bit. We need to tackle the myths, the misunderstandings about this noise, because getting it wrong makes these thoughts so much worse than they need to be. The absolute biggest myth, the one we have to bust right now, is, if I thought it, I must secretly want to do it.
Ugh, yes. That's the one that causes so much guilt and terror, isn't it?
Yeah.
That leap in logic.
And it's just completely false. These thoughts are involuntary. They are not based on desire. In fact, often, like we said, they're the polar opposite of what a person consciously values and wants. Your brain generates thousands of thoughts. The weirdest, most threatening ones, they get a mental danger tag, makes them memorable.
So don't mistake the warning tag for the wish.
Exactly. Don't mistake the tag for the desire. And the second big myth, which really ties into how we try, often unhelpfully, to deal with them, is the idea that I have to fight these thoughts. I need to push them away, suppress them.
Oh, yeah. Been there, done that. I think most people try that first.
And how did that work out for you? Let me guess.
Usually it just came back stronger, louder even. It's like that classic thing, right? Try not to think about a pink elephant.
You absolutely hit the nail on the head. And there's a reason for that. Trying to actively block a thought, it's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
You just pox back up, maybe even more forcefully.
Precisely. Suppression takes constant mental energy. And your brain, bless its heart, has to keep checking, did I successfully suppress that awful thought? And in checking, it brings the thought right back to mind.
So the very act of trying not to think about it makes you think about it more.
It feeds the cycle, fuels the anxiety, makes the thought seem even more important and powerful. You really have to learn to, well, accept its presence, not wrestle with it.
Okay, so we've established random weird thoughts. Normal. Trying to fight them. Counterproductive. But there is a point where this normal mental noise crosses a line, right?
Yeah.
When does it become something that maybe needs clinical attention? What's that threshold?
That's a crucial distinction. It shifts from just background noise to a potential clinical issue when the thoughts stop being fleeting, occasional things, when they become persistent, repetitive, and really intensely anxiety-inducing, when they start messing with your sleep, your job, your relationships. That's the red flag.
So it's about frequency, intensity, and impact.
Exactly. That's when the brain seems to be getting stuck in a loop, and that's where we see the connection to specific conditions.
Right, let's break that down. Because it doesn't look the same in everyone, does it?
No, definitely not. Take obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. Here, the intrusive thought that's the obsession. It's not just a passing image. It feels like a dire warning or a demand. That obsession creates intense anxiety, and that anxiety then drives the compulsion.
The action you take to try and neutralize the thought.
Exactly. So if the obsession is crippling fear of contamination, the compulsion might be washing your hands over and over or cleaning obsessively, but the only reason you do it is to get temporary relief from the anxiety the thought caused.
And doing the compulsion actually reinforces the thought's power in the long run.
It teaches the brain, see, that thought was dangerous and only this ritual kept us safe. It strengthens the whole cycle. Then you have general anxiety disorders. The mind might latch on to intrusive thoughts, especially those what-if catastrophes. It amplifies them, makes them feel more likely or significant. But the key difference from OCD is usually the lack of those very specific ritualized compulsions designed to neutralize the thought itself.
Got it. And the third one you mentioned in the source material was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That operates differently again, doesn't it?
Yes. Fundamentally different. In PTSD, the intrusive experience isn't just a random, bizarre thought popping up out of nowhere. It's usually an involuntary intrusive memory or flashback. It's directly tied to a past traumatic event. And it's often incredibly vivid sensory details, the whole emotional weight of the original trauma.
So it's the past forcing its way into the present.
Exactly. It's a memory replay, not just a random fear projection. Understanding these differences is really key if you're trying to figure out what's going on and what kind of help might be needed.
Okay, the context is super helpful. So let's pivot now to the solutions. Because the good news is people don't have to just suffer with this. As we kind of hinted earlier, the key shift isn't necessarily about making the thoughts vanish forever.
Which is probably impossible anyway.
Right. It's more about changing your relationship with them, how you react, how much power you give them.
That's the core challenge, but also where the real freedom lies. And strategy one for doing that is all about acceptance and mindfulness.
Okay, this sounds simple, but maybe not easy. Observe the thought without reacting. When the thought is something really upsetting or shameful, how do you actually do that? How do you accept something horrific?
You start by recognizing the feeling, that adrenaline surge, the wave of panic or disgust. You recognize it as just that, a feeling, a physiological reaction. It's a reflex, not a command to act or believe the thought. The practical technique here is often called diffusion, like unfusing yourself from the thought. When it pops up, you mentally label it. You might say to yourself, okay, I'm having the thought that X, or, there's my anxious brain doing its thing again.
So you're creating a little distance.
Exactly. You treat it like, clouds passing in the sky. You notice them, but you don't become the cloud. You practice saying, this is just a thought. It doesn't define me. It's not an order. It's about emotional disengagement. And things like grounding exercises are vital here too. When that anxiety spikes, deliberately tuning into your senses. What can I see right now? What can I physically feel? What sounds are around me?
pulls you out of your head and back into the present moment.
Right. Anchors you in reality. Simple things too, like slow, deep breathing, or even just journaling the thoughts without judging them, writing them down, can sometimes take away their power.
Okay, that makes sense. Strategy 2 then moves us into therapy territory. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This seems like the cornerstone for tackling these patterns. And the absolute core teaching of CBT, we really can't stress this enough, is thoughts are not actions. Thinking something doesn't make it true doesn't mean you'll do it. CBT helps you spot the irrational beliefs you've attached to the thought, like that myth, thinking it means I want it. And then it helps you challenge those beliefs and practice different responses that actually reduce the fear instead of feeding it.
Exactly. It's about changing your interpretation of the thought, not trying to wrestle the thought itself into submission, which connects directly to strategy 3, actively stopping suppression. We already know pushing thoughts away backfires spectacularly. So what's the alternative?
Gentle acknowledgement.
Gentle acknowledgement and then redirection. Think of your attention like a spotlight. The reflex, when an unwanted thought appears, is to shine that spotlight right on it and try to shove it away. But that just highlights it, right? Makes it brighter. The better way is to just gently nod at it. Hello, anxiety thought. Noticed you. And then deliberately, gently, shift the spotlight of your attention back to whatever you were doing, back to the present task, the conversation, the world around you.
So you accept it's there, like background noise, but you don't engage with it. You just carry on.
You carry on. Practicing that acceptance over and over is what breaks the fear-resistant cycle. It tells your brain, this thought isn't actually dangerous. We don't need to panic.
Okay, and strategy 4 brings in the physical side. We can't ignore the body's role. Supporting the brain through lifestyle. This isn't just, wellness fluff. It's actual chemical management.
It really is. Think about it. When your baseline stress levels are high, your brain is just more primed to fire off anxious thoughts, including intrusive ones. So things like regular exercise, hugely beneficial. It helps burn off stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Getting consistent, decent quality sleep, absolutely non-negotiable for brain health and emotional regulation.
And maybe you watching the stimulants.
Definitely. Limiting things like caffeine and alcohol can make a difference, as they can often ramp up anxiety and make thoughts feel louder or more urgent. The sources also mention some specific nutrients that seem supportive for brain health and mood. Things like omega-3 fatty acids, which are crucial for brain structure.
Right.
Magnesium, which has a reputation for calming the nervous system. And the B vitamins, which are essential for neurological function. But really important note here, this is about supportive health. It's not a primary treatment on its own. And if you're thinking about major dietary shifts or supplements, definitely talk to a doctor or a qualified professional first.
Absolutely. Good disclaimer. Okay, so with all these strategies, both mental and physical, how does someone know when it's time to move beyond self-help? When have they crossed that line from, okay, this is annoying but manageable noise, to, I think I need professional backup? What are those key signs again?
Yeah, there are maybe 4 main indicators to watch for. First, just the sheer frequency and uncontrollability. If the thoughts are happening constantly or feel totally overwhelming, impossible to dismiss. Second, the emotional fallout. If they're causing intense, persistent feelings of guilt, shame, or dread that linger long after the thought itself has passed.
Okay.
Third, the behavioral impact. If you find yourself engaging in repetitive behaviors or rituals specifically designed to counteract the thought or make you feel safe from it, that's a big sign, often pointing towards OCD. And fourth, just the overall functional impairment. If these thoughts are seriously messing with your sleep, your relationships, your ability to focus at work or school, if they're shrinking your life.
When it starts impacting daily function, it's time to reach out. So if someone recognizes themselves in that description, what are the main effective treatment paths they should know about or ask a professional about?
We have really good evidence-based options now, thankfully. The foundation, as we discussed, is often CBT. But specifically for OCD, the gold standard, the most powerful treatment we have, is a specialized type of CBT called exposure and response prevention, or ERP.
Okay, ERP. That sounds a bit intense. Can you briefly explain what that involves?
It can sound intimidating, yeah, but it's incredibly effective. ERP is basically about guided confrontation. You work with a therapist to gradually, safely expose yourself to the triggers of your intrusive thoughts or obsessions. That's the exposure part. And then this is crucial. You actively resist performing the compulsive behavior or ritual you'd normally do to reduce the anxiety. That's the response prevention.
So, if you fear contamination, you might touch a doorknob.
And then Deliberately not wash your hands immediately. You sit with that anxiety. You learn through direct experience that the anxiety, while uncomfortable, will eventually peak and then naturally decrease on its own without the compulsion.
It breaks the link. It teaches the brain the feared outcome doesn't happen and the ritual isn't actually necessary.
Exactly. It retrains the brain. Another really valuable approach is acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. ACT is a bit different from traditional CBT. It focuses less on directly challenging or changing the content of the thoughts, and more on helping you accept the reality of those difficult inner experiences, the thoughts, the feelings, while strengthening your commitment to living a life guided by your personal core values.
So the thought might still be there, but it doesn't get to drive the bus anymore. You choose your actions based on what matters to you, not based on the fear the thought generates.
That's a great way to put it. ERP focuses on changing the behavioral response to the thought, while ACT focuses more on changing your relationship to the thought and prioritizing value-driven action.
Makes sense. And what about medication?
Medication can absolutely be a helpful part of the picture for many people. SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are often prescribed. They can help lessen both the frequency and the emotional punch of the intrusive thoughts, sort of turns down the volume, making therapy like CBT or ERP more effective.
So they make it easier to engage with the therapy.
Often, yes. But the most robust, long-lasting results typically come from combining medication with good, structured therapy. They work well together.
Wow. Okay, this has been incredibly illuminating. We've really taken this topic out of the shadows, I think. So the big takeaway for everyone listening has to be this. Intrusive thoughts. They're not some dark secret you alone carry. They're not a reflection of your character or sign of moral failure. They seem to be a normal part of how the human mind works, just background mental noise. And crucially, they're not predictors of your future actions. Just understanding that they're temporary, they're involuntary. That alone can start to dial down the fear and the shame quite significantly, can't it?
Absolutely. And maybe that leads us to a final thought, something to reflect on. Perhaps the ultimate power here doesn't lie in trying to achieve the impossible goal of completely eradicating these thoughts. Maybe that's the wrong battle. Maybe the real power comes from the daily, sometimes moment-by-moment practice of patience and self-compassion. Learning to notice the thought, acknowledge it without judgment, like seeing a strange cloud drift by, and then gently redirecting your focus back to your life. Allowing yourself to live fully, guided by your values without being terrified of the random static that your amazing, complex brain sometimes generates. Learning to coexist with the noise rather than letting it silence you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cenario podcast. Don't forget to visit Cenario.com for more expert tips, articles, and supplements designed to support your mental health. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share it with a friend. Until next time, take care of yourself.